One of the saddest moments in Shadow Fight series is the decease of Mei. Shadow gets mad, and goes on a rampage because of it. And as the stranger says, Shadow has an extremely high index of importance, and due to that, a lot of events take place because of him. Many people suffer, the world gets wiped out, stranger appears and so on. But could everything be different, if Mei never died? The answer is yes. What could have happened, however, depends on the reason Mei could have survived in the first place. There are 4 ways Mei could have survived and stayed alive. The first scenario is that Shadow controls his emotions. On the night of Mei's death, let's suppose Shadow was able to hold his anger and trust Shadow Mind. Now, since Shadow Mind didn't have a will or desire to harm anyone, nothing bad would have happened. Shadow would be confused, as well as Mei. As time went, they would be able to connect to Shadow Mind and understand it better. And as soon as they have full control over it, they can do pretty much anything. In this case, shadow energy would be present in the world, but in small quantities. So small that the dynasty wouldn't be able to make a business selling it. And there would be way less heralds. Legion would exist, but it would be different. Their main ideology wouldn't be so much about destroying shadow energy, rather they would be sort of a kingdom that would rival dynasty. Here, heralds would actually unite under Shadow and Mei, since they too possess the most knowledge and ability related to shadow energy. Shadow doesn't destroy the world, no wars occur, since Shadow doesn't need to eliminate anybody. And in case some war is about to happen, he, alongside Mei, would be able to easily stop any villain. Shadow's son grows in good conditions. No mass casualties. No stranger. Everything is peaceful. And Mei lives a happy life with Shadow and their son. Shadow energy helps them to live eternally, and watch out for any threats to the human world. The second possible destiny. Mei is alive because Shadow Mind had a sense of will, and protected her. In order for this case to be real, Shadow Mind has to get its own will. At least a small desire to protect Mei. In Shadow Fight 3, Shadow Mind gets its will quite late in the game. But let's imagine that here, it becomes conscious way earlier. Shadow's attacks would be repelled, and he would get angrier, and hit even harder, however Mei would still convince Shadow to stop. Eventually, no one would die. You'd think everything would be the same, as in the first case, however something is different. Since here Shadow Mind has its will, it could become corrupt by thoughts of everyone around. That's why Shadow and Mei would try their best to limit the amount of people who have access to shadow energy. Dynasty and Legion here would probably never discover shadow energy. And heralds would stop existing, after decades of desperately trying to find shadow energy to study. Kibo, Itu, Bolo wouldn't have played much of a role in this scenario. Marcus never gets trapped. No wars occur that cause insane casualties. Also, Moira and Yolanda wouldn't be immortal, as other characters that rely on shadow energy, such as Ling, Ambassador or Sarge, would be very different. Everything else is very similar to the first scenario. Before we continue, these videos take a decent amount of effort to make. And I'd like to ask you for a favor to help me. Just check out my second channel about the games I develop and give a try to them. Tell your thoughts, suggest your own ideas, leave some feedback. I'll respond to every comment. And take into account your opinion. Thanks again for your attention. Now back to the video. The third way Mei could have stayed alive is if shadow energy had been non-existent inside the human world. Now that may sound impossible, however let's see how it could happen. Titan gets defeated. Shadow energy explodes, and evaporates to the space outside the human world, to the void, where it stays with the ancient race. And it never gets into the human world. Just like before the main story of Shadow Fight 2. This would change literally everything. Shadow would raise his son with Mei, just like a normal human family. Since nothing from the void gets into the human world, King of the Legion never has a chance to start the Legion. 2 princesses are never born. Northerners would most likely form their kingdom. Collector also never gets his powers. Heralds never exist in this universe. A lot of characters wouldn't even be born, almost all events would be much less violent. No one would worry of the world getting destroyed. Since shadow energy doesn't exist here, many locations would be drastically different. And most importantly, developers would have no way of creating Shadow Fight 4 the way it currently exists. The fourth scenario, where Mei survives, is that she had enough strength to resist Shadow's attack. Shadow would be mad, until he realizes he doesn't damage Shadow Mind, but only deals damage to Mei. He would soon come to realize, Shadow Mind has no will or desire, so it can easily be controlled. This case would be very similar to the first case. Except Shadow would develop a fear of using too much of his strength, and accidentally hurting his loved ones. Also, due to May's insane strength, not only Shadow, but also his partner would be feared among nations. It's possible that they would form a faction of their own. After all, when you have two of the strongest people in the world, they're Ultra Prodigy Kid, and a thing that can create worlds, it's reasonable that people themselves would follow you. And this story would also have a happy ending, since everyone is alive. Shadow Mind is completely under control, no world wars. What is common in all of these 4 timelines is that Shadow's descendant wouldn't be able to get as powerful as he got in the original timeline. Also, if May could have lived in any way possible, there would be no point of making Shadow Fight 3, since Shadow and May's son, who is the main protagonist in the game, wouldn't have much of difficulties in his life. He would live a life on a very easy mode, since both of his mighty and skilled parents are with him. Anyway, the theories are subjective and open for debate. Tell your thoughts in the comments. I would really appreciate if you left a like, subscribed and checked out my second channel about my games. Thanks for watching.